Hello to our viewers. My name is Morgan Reeves. I am a children's librarian here at the Iowa City Public Library. And here today with me is our guest author, Delia Ray. She's here as part of the Visiting Author Program presented by Hills Bank and the Iowa City School District Foundation. So a big thank you to those sponsors and the many other donors that make this program possible. This is a really long time literacy initiative that we are so proud to be a part of here at the library. So welcome, Delia.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Delia is the author of 4, at this time, middle grade novels. We've got Ghost Girls, and we have today Singing Hands and Finding Fortune, as well as our very favorite, Here Lies Link, which takes place in Iowa City. And she's also the author of Behind the Blue and Gray, a nonfiction book for intermediate readers. So we'll talk a little bit about some of those books, but first I want to ask you about your childhood.
Oh.
And growing up, and you're from Virginia, right?
Yes, I'm from a little town called Gloucester in Tidewater, Virginia, and we moved there when I was in elementary school. And all this week I've been telling the kids about, I think that's where my fascination with history first started, and with writing stories. I was always a kid who loved to write and who kept notebooks full of poetry, and I loved inventing my own myths, as I've also been telling the kids, way before the Percy Jackson series came out. And I grew up out in the country in an old farmhouse that was built in the 1830s with a lot of room to explore. And a lot of history, being from the land of Yorktown and colonial Williamsburg. So all those years that my mom dragged me on tours through colonial Williamsburg, now I'm very grateful for it, because I think it really, made its mark on me.
And I was reading that you started writing in 5th grade or so?
Yeah, right around the age of the kids that I'm talking to this week. So that's cool, because I've been getting a lot of questions about, when did you know you wanted to be a writer? And I think it was right around then. And I didn't necessarily think that I could be a writer someday, but I knew that no matter what, I wanted to work with books, and I thought about being a librarian.
Oh, that's always a good
Yeah.
good occupation.
And seeing all these great elementary librarians this week, I'm thinking, is it too late? But yes, and I started out as a book editor and found my way into children's books.
All right, can you talk a little bit about how you got your start? What part of education growing up really kind of pushed you towards, or that you found is most useful in writing?
Well, I think writing on my own a lot. I had a best friend, Carolyn Clark. We're still friends today, and she actually is in a position at Smithsonian Publishing in DC, so we both ended up in publishing. And we jointly wrote books of poetry and those mythology books, and then tried to force our friends and family members to buy them. And didn't have
enterprising.
didn't have too many takers. Our parents were about it. But just having that all the way through, we met in 4th grade, and we're friends all the way through high school and shared our writing. And then I think having lovely, encouraging, inspiring English teachers, Mrs. Gwyneth Whitaker, I need a shout out for her, who encouraged me a lot. And I just always, I feel like from being a young age, wrote. And then when I went to college at University of Virginia and had some great writing instructors there. One being John Casey, the novelist who had won the National Book Award, and he was very encouraging. A poet named George Garrett, and just incredible workshops where at the time I didn't know what greatness I was brushing up against. John Irving came to speak to our class,
Wow.
which was quite memorable. Yeah, so a lot of inspirations in college too. And then, so I didn't think someday I'll be an author, but I thought I'll be a book editor.
Okay.
And through those college professors steered me to a program called the Radcliffe Publishing Course. And it was for people who knew they wanted to be book editors and move to New York City when they were done. And this program was at Radcliffe College in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And it was pretty competitive, so I was thrilled when I got in and did that graduate program. And then while all my classmates sort of migrated to the Big Apple, by then I had met my fiance, Matt, who was moving to Seattle. So
you decided not to move to New York.
I did not. I never got to do the whole New York thing. But one of my teachers at Radcliffe was in Seattle and starting a small publishing firm, and I was his very first employee.
That's nice. That's a great little bit of serendipity.
Yes,
That works out well
pretty
sometimes.
incredible, because
Yeah.
it's not like Seattle is any kind of publishing hub, so it was lucky.
That is really lucky. So really kind of growing up around a lot of the history and then having, like, it sounds like friendships and just really great networking experiences were the most important part of getting to where you, or at least got to the book editing part of your
Yeah,
life.
for sure.
So how did you go from book editing? It's not a great leap, I don't think, to jump into writing, but where did that leap come from?
So, being a small publishing firm that did all kinds of books, in those years that I was book editing, I worked on everything from the Olympic Guide to Race Walking. Many people don't know that race walking is an Olympic sport, but I found out more than I ever wanted to know about that. I edited a book about nuclear waste management. Our big bestseller, I've showed the kids pictures of this today, the cover was a series called Alaska Bear Tales.
Ooh.
And it was a collection of true stories told by survivors of bear attacks. And that was something that I worked on for a long time. And so how did I get my big break? Well, I helped with an adult book. It was a coffee table book, sort of all surrounding this very special collection of Klondike Gold Rush photos taken by the Kinsey brothers. And that coffee table book did really well. And we, in addition to our book publishing work, we also did book packaging, where big publishing companies from New York would contract our smaller firm that would farm us out to help them put the book together. And so when the adult book with the Klondike Gold Rush photos did well, they said it'd be great to have a kid's book. And so it was my job to find an author. And I had been looking for a few weeks trying to find just the right person when it occurred to me, wait a minute,
I could do this.
I could do this. And so I tried out for the job and wrote some sample chapters, and that's how it happened.
And
so
they
I
said,
feel like,
sure, this is great. We don't have to hire anybody else.
Yeah.
Two for the
It
price
was
of one.
Definitely being at the right place at the right time, and a really lucky break. And I'm so grateful that I worked for that little company, Lang Communications. But it also gave me a false sense of what it takes to make it into the children's book world, because I feel like I had an in. Then I went on from that book and published 2 more nonfiction books about the Civil War. But after I got the bug of writing for that age group about history, then it just stuck.
And then you started to add a little bit of fiction in there.
I did, but that didn't happen until after I moved to Iowa and had my first serious experience with rejection when one of the first places I went looking for ideas here was the Hoover Presidential Library and Museum, and learned all about First Lady Lou Henry Hoover and became fascinated with her, and I couldn't believe that there wasn't a biography for kids about her. So I decided I was going to be the one to write it, and I drew up a whole book proposal, wrote some sample chapters, and
Didn't work out.
did not work out so well.
Do you still have those somewhere?
I do.
Waiting just for.
No, but then that led to my first novel, because in those archives, I found this collection of letters about the summer camp that the Hoovers built in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and where they soon began meeting the children who lived in the hollows around their camp, realized they didn't have a school, and then the Hoovers decided to build them one. And so all the letters about that school, all the correspondence between the teacher and the White House from 1929 to 1933 about this little mountain school is at the Hoover Library. So through researching Lou Henry, that's how I discovered.
And that's where you get Ghost Girl.
And that's where Ghost
Which I don't,
Girl. Oh.
again, those are checked out. Those two are, we
Oh,
have
good.
2 copies of those. And I actually, when I found out at the, when you came in the spring to talk to us about about the new
Finding
Finding
Fortune.
Fortune, and you were talking about the new release of the new cover for Ghost
Paperback,
Girl.
yes.
So we didn't order the paperback, but we ordered a pre-bind so that we could have the new prettier cover.
The cover that I
prefer.
I think I can say that.
I think we can say that without
Yes.
being
Yes.
unkind. Yeah.
Right.
It's okay to prefer one or the other. It's
Yes,
fine.
I prefer the new cover.
So that's coming. It's on its way.
Okay, good.
I'm excited
Good.
about it. So, do you have, aside from writing professionally now, do you do any sort of personal writing at home, just kind of for your own enjoyment and not to have published anymore?
I always have great hopes of being a journaler.
Great hopes.
And then I start. I was looking when I was getting ready for these talks this week and, kind of taking a walk down memory lane. I have a whole stack of journals that I've started, which is kind of interesting because they're always filled with enthusiasm and, but I'm going to keep this writing. But I would not get very far. So I don't do a lot of personal writing. In the early days in college and a little after, I wrote a lot of short stories just for myself. And but no, most of my writing now goes towards specific projects that I'm working on.
And do you have a project that you're working on right now?
I do.
Can you tell us anything about it?
I can. I've been talking about it this week. So that farm where I grew up, in the days when the farmhouse was first there, it was a pretty big piece of property, about 100 acres that my family bought, and it used to be called Havers Hall, a house that was built in 1830. And when my parents recently sold that farm just a few years ago, it was very bittersweet. It was time for them to move because it was a lot to take care of. But my parents had moved there in 1969, so
Wow, yeah.
we loved it. And so as a gift, when they sold the farm, my mother had found a historic photo of the front of the house from 1895 with the Clopton family. And they're all arrayed in front of this house, and they're a very mysterious-looking bunch. And it's the father who had served in the Civil War, and his wife was quite stern-looking, shall we say, and then 3 of their youngest 8 children. But then in the background, what's really cool is there's a face in the window of a young black man who was working in that house.
Okay.
So I've been trying to find out all about the Cloptons and about that face in the window, and I found a lot of really interesting things that were going on right around there, just 2 miles down the road. And so I finished a lot of my research this summer, and now I'm just trying to figure out what direction the story is going to take.
Well, we'll look forward to that
Yeah.
one when it comes out, maybe, hopefully.
Yeah.
I know. How long does it take for a book?
That's
I know.
the problem, Morgan.
It takes a while, yeah.
For me, it takes a while. I have friends who can just crank it out, but For me, I enjoy the research so much, and go off in different directions, and I love that sometimes it's hard for me to get around to the writing part.
Oh, I'll get to that eventually.
Right. And so I also was telling the kids today, because that's one of their first questions, how long does it take you to write a book? The shortest has been 8 months, and the longest has been 5 years.
What was the 8 months one?
The 8 months one was Finding Fortune.
That one was a quick turnaround.
That was on a deadline, because that book I sold just on the first 50 pages and a synopsis, and it was the first time I've approached it that way, and I don't know if that's the best kind of arrangement for me. I like being able to, let my creativity take different directions, and so 8 months was a little short. I think my ideal time would be about a year.
So you kind of got your direction, and then you're like, well, I've got to keep going on this direction.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
And what was the longest one you said was?
And that was Ghost Girl, and that's because it did start out as a biography, and then I kept
The evolution is what led that one to be longer.
And even though my early days were writing fiction as a kid and stories, when I published my first 3 nonfiction books, I got away from thinking that way. And so, and then I had this idea, but it came to me slowly, you can make this a novel about the President's Mountain School. So in a way, I was sort of teaching myself about how to write a novel. Yeah, and there were some few false starts in there, and having some kids and things like that.
Sometimes things take time,
Right.
Speaking of your kids, you have kids? So
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your family?
So I have 3 daughters. My husband and I, Matt and I, have 3 girls who are kind of grown up now. The oldest is 27, and she is a teacher. She taught for a couple years in D.C., and now she is in the Peace Corps.
Oh, cool.
And she's a so-called teacher trainer with only 2 years teaching experience in the Gambia, West Africa.
Wow.
And she's been there 6 months, and is having a really amazing, challenging, difficult time, but I think does not regret it at all.
It's a great experience.
Yeah. And so our families, we're going to see her after the holidays, and we're going to the Gambia.
Maybe you'll find some new
I
inspiration.
know, I was thinking that. It's totally off my usual roadmap for writing. And then our middle daughter, Susanna, is a second-year med student at the University of Chicago. And then my third daughter is a senior at University of Virginia. So she spent a lot of summers going back to see our families there, and got the Virginia bug.
So you moved out here, but she's gone.
Yeah, she went
she's
back.
gone
And
back.
so that's been, because that's where I went to school and met my husband. So that's been fun to go
And
back
so,
and see her.
visiting your daughter maybe has led to extra visits to Virginia, and maybe
Yes.
extra,
Yeah. And
extra writing.
extra research. It has. It all worked out.
It's nice how those things work out.
Yeah.
So we talked about your current project, which is that, and then I also have a question about, do you have a favorite author, aside from maybe, no, you're not your own favorite author, but.
I am not my own favorite
But
author.
do you have favorite authors? Do you have favorite authors that you like to read, or favorite authors, that are also middle grade? Do you have?
Yes. My favorite middle grade author right now, like a lot of people, is Kate DiCamillo.
Oh, yeah.
I love her books, and I've discovered them a little bit late. I had read Because of Winn-Dixie, but I recently read Tiger Rising, and I love that book.
That is a really good
Yeah.
one.
And another author I love right now is Kimberly Brubaker Thomas. Have you read her?
I haven't,
Yeah,
no.
it's historical fiction.
Well, okay.
Yes. So they're 2 of my favorites, but I have a really difficult time. The kids always want to ask me my favorite book, favorite author. It just changes all the time.
Yeah.
They were even asking me today, you're my favorite food. I can't even answer that. Yeah, it's hard to.
We were talking last night. What are you reading right now adult fiction or
Adult fiction, I'm reading one a lot of people in Iowa City are reading is a novel called The Nix,
yeah,
which is by a University of Iowa Writers Workshop grad who was
Yeah.
just here for the book festival. And
which is why our hold list is a mile long still.
yeah, and I'm really enjoying that. So
We'll read it fast. We've got people.
yeah, I actually bought my
You bought
copy.
your copy. Okay, then that's fair. Yeah, we've had lots of people wanting that one, so I'm gonna have to put my name on the hold list here soon, and maybe I'll get to read an adult
Yeah.
book sometime. Is there a book out there that you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I haven't read that yet, and I have to read it someday? It's always on your someday
A
pile.
classic. You know, I've never read Oliver Twist.
Never Oliver Twist.
Yeah, and I have quite a list of classics that I would like to read where I feel as an English major.
Put on a desert island, with nothing else to do, you would sit there
Yeah.
and read those.
Yeah, I have a big long list of things I should be reading. And I've been recently discovering poetry, and I'm really enjoying it.
Well, we do have a great poetry
Yeah,
collection.
Mary Oliver is a new favorite poet.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of who I'm really enjoying still with. I still love J. Patrick Lewis for children's poetries.
Oh, yeah.
So he's from not from my hometown, but from the town I went to college in Westerville, Ohio. So
Oh, that's neat.
yeah, so that was, he spoke at our college a couple times. So it was great.
Yeah.
But so as far as your writing, and you really enjoy writing middle grade fiction, why do you enjoy writing middle grade fiction at this point?
Because of those kids. 4th, 5th, and 6th graders are the best.
The
which I've
enthusiasm.
been discovering this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I just think it's this blossoming time of reading and them exploring what they like and also being, you know, not self-conscious at all about expressing it. And so I love interacting with them. I love where their minds are at that point, and maybe because I have such vivid memories of reading The Secret Garden, Nancy Drew, Little Women, you know, and what those books meant to me. So that was a vivid time in my life, 10, 11, 12. And so I really identify with that, with the mind of a 10, 11, 12-year-old. Yeah.
That's okay. I do too.
Yeah.
I think that's when a lot of us got our like reading identity. You read a lot up to kind of that age where you're being told what to read by your teachers, your parents, but
Right.
as you get into that sweet spot, you really get to start choosing your own fiction, nonfiction, your choice.
True. And I've thought, you know, about exploring writing for young adults a little bit, but I still
Never
pull
really,
back now.
never
I think
really
I'm
got
in
that.
my sweet spot that I just kind of stumbled upon, but I love it.
Aside from writing, do you have any other like passions, hobbies that you really enjoy doing to get your mind relaxed off of writing?
Reading, walking, gardening. I have great gardening aspirations.
Oh.
They never, I never quite live up to my dreams. We live on about 10 acres on the Iowa River, so that's a big job, is taking care of that land.
The big, yeah.
Yes.
The more there is to do.
Right. And we were talking earlier about my kids and my husband with my dad and my brother over many years built a tree house that
Yes,
looks
the
out
tree
over the
house.
Iowa River. And it kept growing and becoming more elaborate. It has 2 stories and a wood stove, a tree growing up through the middle of it.
Wow.
And so sometimes if I'm really suffering with writer's block, I go out there. And
That's your space.
yes, it depends on how many raccoons are inhabiting it at the moment, but it's beautiful. I just was out there this weekend with all the leaves turning all around it. It's a cool space.
That's awesome.
So I showed the kids pictures of that today.
Were they all very excited? Can I live there? I want to live
Well,
there.
one boy said, "You live in there? You live in there?" And I said, "No, I don't live there full time, but I probably could.
You could make it work for a little
Yeah.
bit in the warm weather.
Yeah.
Yeah, tree houses. I grew up on Swiss Family Robinson,
Oh,
so
I love Swiss
loved that.
Family,
And
yes.
that was always my
Yeah.
my ideal, was living in a tree house and
Right.
riding an ostrich, but
Yeah.
maybe no ostriches here.
Yeah, this treehouse of ours does not quite compare to the Swiss Family Robinsons, but it's got some way more elaborate than I thought it would be.
Is it ever going to make it into the books?
Into the books. I haven't thought about that.
It's the kids are always so interested in it.
Yeah. Today, the kids were giving me all kinds of ideas of little things.
Like, these are my ideas, let me help
yeah,
you.
seen on my website too about why didn't you write about that and why didn't you write about that. So it's cool to get excited about new things
Yeah.
that they bring up.
Finding out their interests is half the fun, isn't it?
For sure, yeah.
Do you have any final stories to share with us about what you've been talking about at the schools to the kids?
Well, one idea, speaking of ideas on my website, during that time when I was saying that was such a formative time, probably when I was about 11 or 12 years old, I was building a fort with my cousin and sister out in the woods, and we turned over an old log, and underneath it was just this treasure trove of old stuff. It had probably been kind of like a dumping ground, maybe back in the late 1800s, but old silverware with bone handles and medicine bottles. But in all that mix of stuff was a key, and it was this great big key about this long, and I carried it around for a really long time thinking, I'm gonna find out what this key goes to. And so the kids today were suggesting, well, at first were saying, did you find out what the key went to? And I never did, but that I should write about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a cool idea.
I like that. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for coming and talking to us. And thank you again to our sponsors, Hills Bank and the Iowa City School District Foundation, for sponsoring the Visiting Author Program. And thank you to the viewers for enjoying this interview with Delia Ray. And you can learn more about Delia on deliaray.com, and you can see this interview and others at video.icpl.org. So head there for more author interviews, and thanks again.
Great. Thank you, Morgan.